Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of AWS Bites podcast. My name is Luciano, and as always, I'm joined by Owen. But today is a bit special because we have with us a very special guest, Farrah Campbell. And I'm sure that if you have done anything with AWS, you are familiar with Farrah. But in case you're not, Farrah works for AWS and she is head of modern compute community. She is also a prolific international speaker and she has been working very closely with AWS Heroes. So today we want to get Farah's opinion on a bunch of AWS related topics and we're sure it's going to be an awesome and interesting episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. AWS Bytes is brought to you by Fortiorem. If you're looking for a partner to architect, develop, and modernize on AWS, give Fortiorem a call. You can check out fortiorem.com to find more information about what we do, some of our case studies, and how to reach out to us. Okay, let's get started. So thanks, first of all, Farah, for taking the time. We know that you are always super busy and going around off to different conferences and events. So it's amazing that you found some time for us, and we're really happy to have you here on the podcast. Should we start maybe with a quick introduction on your side?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And sorry it took so long to make this happen, but I'm super excited to be here. But yeah, no, my name is Farrah Campbell. I work at AWS, and I get to work with our amazing developers, around the world, specifically, the heroes and our community builders. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Farah, you mentioned the AWS Heroes program, and that's one thing I really wanted to ask about because we have, I think, a former hero and a current hero on the call. So tell us about this program. I think a lot of people are really interested in understanding how you get into it, right? What are the features of an AWS hero? And maybe do you have any recommendations for people who might like to be a hero one day?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, like the AWS Heroes program really it recognizes, people that, go out of their way to help others, through, knowledge sharing. They go above and beyond really trying to make sure that, they help to unblock people, with things that they've been able to figure out. This isn't a program that you can apply for. It's not something that you can get accepted or rejected from. It really is a program that, looks for people, that are going out of their way consistently. And it's basically, it's kind of, it's something that happens because of other things that you are doing. And I guess my recommendation would be that, if for any aspiring heroes, that really shouldn't be the goal. The goal really should be, to help others and, to continue to go above and beyond for them, to share knowledge, trying to help others, within the communities that you're a part of, maybe you maintain, open source projects, but really, the goal should be to help others, because there really is no set way to become one. I still don't even know how I got in. So
It sounds like the whole idea of trying to become an AWS hero is against the very principle, really, that the people who aren't really trying, who are just helping people by their nature, will get selected. Yeah. I should probably clarify as well. I mentioned we have a former hero, and that's yourself, Farah. And just in case anybody thinks you can get ejected from the Heroes program, you probably should explain why you're not allowed to be a hero anymore.
yeah, you cannot be a hero and work at AWS. That the point is to recognize, people outside of the company that are, working to help others. It's not about the people internally that are working to help others. But yeah, no, I actually thought about that when I was, deciding if I wanted the job, if I was going to actually apply for the job. So I'm like, did I want to lose my hero status because I just loved being part of that group so much that it was, hard to let that go.
You are still a hero for us, don't worry.
I appreciate that. Once a part of the group, I think you're always part of the group. And that's one of the beauties about the program. And actually, I think just the AWS community in general is just such a welcoming community. And I feel like there's so many people that, work to, to help each other and, actually really enjoy working together and spending time together.
Yeah, I mean it's a shame that you had to hand in the hero badge, but as in your current role, I guess you get to be part of that in a very impactful way. There's also the AWS Community Builders idea, and since Heroes sounds like it's very much about community and getting content out there, helping people to learn in various different ways, it might be a bit confusing for people. What is the distinguishing thing about community builders compared to heroes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so because, like the Heroes program is, a bit more exclusive and there's no real way to kind of put your hand up and say, hey, I want to be involved. The Community Builders program was created, it was a few years ago. And that one you can actually apply for. So we have applications that you can, put your name in the pool. I believe it's once a year. there. We used to do it twice a year, but now it's just once a year. And so that the wait list is open, and, we'll review those applications, and, hopefully accept as many people as possible. But that really is the defining difference, is that you can apply to be an AWS Community Builder and put your hand up to be considered for the program, or the Hero program. Somebody internally has to make that call and to basically reach out to you.
Okay. And so what would you say to people who are saying, okay, that's fine. I'll just have to wait to be called on as a hero, but what do I need to do to get involved in community builders?
Yeah,
Is there somewhere they should go?
Yeah, I mean, you go to the AWS Developer Center, that the page, and it's listed right there. Even if you
Okay.
just search AWS Community Builders, the application will come right up. It's a pretty highly utilized site, but that's really different. And get involved in the user groups, in your area, or maybe if you're involved in DevOps and you want to get involved in the DevOps community, and starting to use AWS. But I would really say, just joining some of the local communities that are in your area. There's so many of them all over the world. It's actually incredible, really. So there's many opportunities just to kind of start getting involved. And we also have a lot of people listed on the websites. And so you can reach out to others that, that are actually in the community, when you join an AWS user group or attend an event, and kind of ask somebody, what did they do to, join the program. But, I think really starting to kind of network with the like-minded individuals is really, helpful for, people that are looking to be part of the program.
That's definitely a great suggestion. I actually want to change subject just a little bit. I was in Copenhagen. I think it was the AWS Community Day some time ago. We met there, and I attended your talk, and I think it was an amazing talk where you basically shared your career and some advices for people that are not necessarily just in cloud, but like more in technology. So maybe one thing that we can talk about today is just maybe a quick summary of your career, what you think were the right choices, the mistakes, and the things you learned. And then, in a way, what can we share with people so that we can give them suggestion if they want to get started in tech?
Yeah, no. So actually, mine is really interesting. I spent over a decade in healthcare management. Did not enjoy that really at all. It just was not. It wasn't fulfilling in any way that I, wanted it to be. And I was always infatuated with the tech industry. My stepdad had a company that I got to work at when I was 18, and it was just so fun to be around, people that were like creating something from nothing. Come up with these random ideas, and then, they were writing it in a language that I didn't even understand. So I was just so curious about everything that they were doing, and it just seemed kind of like magic to me. And then I moved to Portland, Oregon, and there was there seemed like there's like kind of a vibrant tech community there, coming from like Klamath Falls and Eugene, where there really wasn't at the time. And so I decided that I wanted to start trying to get involved in tech or get a job. And I applied for like a year, nothing happened. And then I started volunteering at tech events. The first one was Tech Fest Northwest. I ended up meeting Kara Swisher, and she was basically like, "Why are you not working in tech? You seem like you love it." And I, basically explained I hadn't, nobody was taking my applications. I wasn't getting accepted. But I had this offer for this part-time job, and she's like, you should really just kind of go for it. And she sent me Steve Jobs' commencement address from Stanford. And so I did. I, quit my full-time job, which was really scary because I was a single mom. I've always been a single mom of two boys. And so, making sure that I could pay the bills was really important. But I ended up turning that job into, full-time within a month. I was an office manager. And from there, I met somebody at that office. And so then my next role was a director of operations at another small startup. And then another director of operations role that got expanded to customer and people operations. And then I ended up at Stackery, where it was like basically my first time, I guess like out in the field or in the wild. And, really my goal working there was to build out the AWS relationship and, to help to get, developers interested in the work, the work that we were doing. And that's kind of really where it all started. It was kind of my first intro working in the cloud at Stackery and into serverless. And it was just so many exciting things happen. And so I really think that job was really pivotal because it allowed me to, to get started with the AWS community and then serverless, and things kind of really just took off from there. It's really crazy because every single one of my jobs I was not qualified for at all, but I somehow made it work.
Is that like an implicit suggestion to people to try to go off their comfort zone and try new things?
That's actually what my talk was about yesterday, is like, stepping outside of your comfort zone. I talked about, as children, we believe we can do anything, like the world is our oyster, like jump. I thought I could run as fast as my parents' car was going, and I obviously couldn't, but, talking about like, instead of thinking that you can't, start telling ourselves that, we can. and really kind of adopt this like growth mindset, stop questioning our ability, embrace, that actually failing is an opportunity to grow, and you're only really failing if you give up. And so I think, yeah, I think really stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying things that, really kind of push you outside of, what you're comfortable doing is kind of key really here, I think, in growing specifically, I think in this industry too, because things are just changing all the time. And so I feel like most people are always feeling like they don't know everything and are feeling like they're out of their comfort zone all sometimes, no matter what they're doing.
Is that characteristic, that kind of perseverance to keep pushing yourself outside your comfort zone until it you got that turning point and you were able to get into that role at Stackery? Is that something that's part of your personality, or was that something that you learned through the process? Or was there like a sliding door moment where you could have just called it quits and didn't?
I definitely could have called it quits. I mean, I was in tears basically and having panic attacks almost every single one of the roles that I was doing just because I felt so out of my element, and I just felt like everybody knew so much more than I did. In fact, I mean, like I as an office manager, I mean, I stopped the meeting because I thought they were talking about people when they were talking about JSON and Cassandra, and so like I was constantly, asking, what I felt were silly questions, but they really weren't. I mean, I remember my first time, actually, I was talking about my first time using the computer. And it's like when I was 18, I was really kind of doing something. And then like the error popped up and it said you performed an illegal operation, is going to close down. And I was so worried that the cops were going to get called and I was going to be in trouble with my stepdad. I mean, it just kind of, I feel like I've constantly, felt out of my element. But again, I kind of gone back that like that was not me as a child. I was definitely a go-getter. And I don't know what happened to me over the years that where I came into this questioning everything I, can do, or sizing myself up. And so I really, when I made the decision to make the move to tech, I really decided I was going to be brave, to push myself. I was going to do whatever I could to be positive, because there was no way I was going to keep showing up every day when I was feeling like a failure without, continuing to kind of focus on like the potential that was there, and just, trying to have some like resilience to, what I was going to be going through. I think that's really a huge part of, actually kind of growing your career. And then I don't think anybody achieves success in isolation. And so I think, another really critical, aspect of my career growth has really been the connections that I've made along the way. Very early on, I was very focused on the relationships, not the transactions that, were at hand. And, work to make sure that, just work to make sure that I was developing relationships that would end up helping me. I mean, some of those early relationships are still helping me, today. The people that I can lean on, they're people that, want to see me succeed. And I think that's really, really important when you're getting started in tech is, to kind of have somebody there to help support, we kind of help keep you moving forward, somebody else that is, can maybe offer some advice when things seem tough, or just to give you some like encouragement when, when you're ready to throw your keyboard or your computer at the wall because something still isn't working.
Another similar question I have is that you moved from kind of a very serverless focused community to a broader role where you are advocating for pretty much the broader world of AWS. Is there anything interesting there that you want to share? Maybe any anecdote, any story, or I don't know. You liked it more when it was serverless and more focused, or like the whole AWS gives you more opportunities?
I mean, the serverless will always have like a very special place in like my heart, just because it was such a different feeling getting started with this community. Everything was so new. Everybody was learning from one another. There was really no wrong answer because, people were working to, figure out how to solve problems for their own business objectives. And those were different, but there was so many different ways to do things. Right. And again, it was just so exciting. The community really wanted to learn from one another. So it definitely will always hold a special place in my heart. I think the big difference is just understanding like the scale and the amount of things that are happening all over the world, and being able to kind of see that from the inside, it's just incredible. And I think another thing is like being able to kind of help bring some of the containers and serverless together. Like I'll never forget the very first time I had a call with the heroes, and we had, I was bringing the serverless heroes and the container heroes together, and they're like, I think it was Mike Fielder, he's like, are we supposed to be on the same call together? Like, are we allowed, like, are we all really we're bringing this all together? And I think that's really important because it allows the conversation and, for people to learn from things that are working for other teams, that, different technologies that other people are using. But yeah, I think the scale really, and, coming from small startups, kind of very focused on, very specific, workloads and things that we were at Stackery, and now at AWS, it's, it's really incredible. And it also feels like more pressure. I'll say that too, because like the impact, anything that you do, there's more impact that you can have. And so I think for me, it feels like a lot more pressure to, to do the right thing.
I can only imagine, to be honest, because of the scale of everything you're dealing with at AWS. But one thing you still do quite a lot of, and you mentioned it, that you're still speaking quite a lot. You've done a lot of talks around the world, even several keynotes. Is this part of what you were saying about just building your network, or what is speaking specifically for you? What's the goal there? Why do you do it?
I don't really know why I do it. I actually am surprised people ask me. I mean, even the first time when I was asked, I didn't know. I actually was really scared to go talk in front of a bunch of developers because I didn't know. I didn't think that I would have anything relevant to say. But I think it kind of started after I was involved in this documentary called The Chasing Grace, and the film was really about different aspects of working in tech, specifically from I guess. From a female's point of view, I'll say that. But the film I was in is about closing the pay gap and different ways women have approached handling that. But from there, I had a little bit of exposure, and I got to meet a few other people. And I was talking to Andrew Clay Schaefer at reInvent. And this is, I don't know, 7 years ago. And he actually said I should get up on stage. He's like, I should start doing talks to kind of help, show people that you can change your career and end up in a good place, right? And so I put my hat into the ring one time at a local event in Portland, Oregon, called Tau, and it was a lightning talk about opening your doors and changing your narrative. And again, it's kind of shifting that mindset into I can, and focusing on being positive, choosing to reframe things that are happening on a day-to-day basis that are negative, that might impact how I'm feeling, to something more positive, so it doesn't affect me and bring me down. But then after that, I was offered to DevOps Days Dallas reached out and offered me a slot, and then from there, Serverless Days Sydney. That was my very first international talk, and I will never forget it.
Wow.
But I think I keep doing it because I keep getting asked, and I feel like there must be something there, and people must think that they're learning something from me. So if I can help anybody else to show that making a jump in your career, or that I didn't get a college degree. I was I was married, divorced with 2 kids at 24, and that is not how I envisioned my life to be when I was a teenager. And so I think it's I'll keep doing this as long as I feel like as long as others feel like I have something useful to say.
And I've seen you speak in the past, and I think it's clear why you became a community hero. Like for anybody, we all suffer from imposter syndrome, but for anybody who has like a harder route into tech, then to be honest, the relatively straightforward route that I had, it could be so challenging for people. So, but even people like I definitely got something out of it from the point of view of thinking about imposter syndrome, which is I think universal.
Yeah, and I'm trying. How do we get over that? Like, what is wrong? I mean, like, I work with some of the smartest people from all over the world. Even, I mean, like, the community members internally at AWS, and I feel like everybody has imposter syndrome. And I'm like, why is this when like everybody is so incredible? I mean, it makes me feel better sometimes, like selfishly, which I feel bad even saying that when I hear others do. But I even talked to some distinguished engineers here at AWS that, suffer from it. I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, you have so many people that look up to you, why aren't you feeling that, and kind of like, I got this, like, I'm good at what I do. But maybe someday we'll get there. But I just feel like I hear so many people talking about imposter syndrome, and I really wish that we could move past that, but it's tough.
Yeah, let's see what we can do. I mean, I think it's great that we're talking about it, because at least then it helps to build empathy when you realize that everybody's feeling the same way to some degree, and to treat people a bit better and avoid a lot of the problems we've had, I guess, traditionally. So I think any more people we can get out there speaking who aren't speaking today, that certainly helps, right? Just to broaden the voices we have
Yeah.
out there. And I'd love to know, do you have any advice for people who are struggling to get out there, also nervous? Like 99% of people are reluctant to apply and commit to doing public speaking. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I mean, I would say start small. Like, I mean, I definitely did that. You want to start with something a little bit more low pressure engagement. Maybe like a local meetup. There's webinars. There's so many different opportunities to kind of throw your hat into the ring. And then I think too is like it's really important to know your why. So like, what are you going to speak about? Is it to inspire? Is it to educate? To share your experiences? So I think really that will really help to kind of guide content to make sure that that the information is valuable. And I think people really connect with stories, personal ones. And that's really how, I mean, all my talks have been, focused on that. And they'll start with like, my story, the journey, the challenges, the triumphs. And I don't think a lot of people even like to talk about the challenges, or where like the things that really were hard, or, kind of discussing all the, the trials and just the inadequacies that, you might have had along the way. But I think, really being authentic is really key, to making lasting impact, and to, if this is something that you want to do, I think, making sure that like whatever you're doing is authentic is really, really important if you want to continue to do it. And then believing in yourself. Like, confidence comes from within. Remind yourself that, you have valuable insights, that your voice matters, that your opinion matters. I mean, I have reminders that are sent to my, like, that I've set up, and I have multiple different ones that help me with, being brave, or just kind of telling myself that I'm a badass, like, you got this, and just like, and those are really, really helpful for me to kind of keep going, because, when sometimes you get into that negative self-talk. And so when a reminder kind of pops up and reminds you to, step outside, or you got this, it's okay to fail, don't give up, that's actually failing, things like that. I think the reminders have really, really helped me. And I do those a lot when I'm getting ready to do a talk, because I still am so nervous. And it just, yeah.
That's definitely a great strategy. I like it. Maybe I'm gonna copy it. But yeah, I wanted to remark a little bit the imposter syndrome with a slightly different question. My opinion, at least the way I feel it, is more like an anxiety that this world is moving so fast and you'll never be able to even catch up, because as you learn something new, there are already 5 new things that just came out this morning, and you like really don't even have the time to try to learn all of them. So I think personally, I feel that this weight of this world is going so fast, and I can just try to chase it, but I'll never reach a point where I can say, oh yeah, I know everything that there is to know in this craft, because it changes so fast, right? Which in a way is great, because our work is so varied and everything is always new. So every day is a different adventure, but can create that anxiety and that feeling of I'm not good enough for what the world needs right now. So I guess if we try to translate that into the cloud, we have seen lots of changes, of course, since the beginning of the cloud. Is one of the most rapidly evolving fields in tech. But I think especially in the last few years, there has been a lot of innovation. So maybe my question to you is like, yeah, what do you think about that? And maybe what's your bold prediction for the future of the cloud?
I mean, I think innovation is and the growth is going to continue at a rapid pace. I don't see it stopping anytime soon. It doesn't feel like it's going to stop. I also agree that things have just seemed like incredibly fast, like changing on, I mean, even if you look at like announcements from AWS, there's something coming out. We're getting close to reInvent. There's going to be so many new things that are announced that it's really, really hard to keep up with. And I feel like it does, like, it makes you feel like inadequate. But I think, yeah, like the innovation and growth will continue. I honestly think there's going to be more adoption and trust, with AI, ML, the GenAI. I think it's going to become part of just the tooling conversation. I don't think it's going to be the focus on GenAI. I think it's going to be, this is kind of going to be like your assistant that people are using. I think that's probably my big thing, is like that. Like, I think that we've over-indexed talking about it so much. But I see how it can be helpful. I use a lot of these tools to, kind of get some of the grunt work out. And so it allows me to work more on strategic things instead of the actual, the building, this random, going through survey data and trying to, make some assumptions. I can easily create an app that does things like that for me. But I think that soon it will just become part of like the tooling that people are using. And there won't be such a focus on like, let's make sure we say this as a word in part of the blog post, just so we can get attention. Kind of reminds me of like when, serverless was that way very early on, like blockchain was that way, early on. I mean, the same is, I feel like it'll move on, and it'll just kind of become, part of the way we work. And I think we're all going to be learning. We're all going to have to learn just as much as we do today in 5 years, 10 years. I don't think the pace ever stops, because it just, the more we learn, the more we want to do more of, and it just keeps going.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that there is a little bit too much of a hype on GenAI. My theory is that because it's something that has an effect that is like tangible on everyone, even people that are not necessarily techie, I think that's maybe kind of inflating the conversation a little bit more than it should. But yeah, I agree with your prediction that it's going to become more of a tool that we will be using naturally in our day-to-day life, whether it's tech or not. Maybe it's even irrelevant, but yeah, it's something that we are going to just be used to it and not even think too much about it at some point.
Yeah. Or like just, I think even to now, like people are, kind of, I don't know, you kind of want to step away, or like, maybe I don't want to even read that because I'm sick of hearing about it. I think, people won't feel like that anymore. But yeah, it's a crazy time, and I don't see it ever ending. But I mean, was it different earlier on? Like, when do you? I'm actually very curious. I have a question for you guys that have like been in this a lot longer than I have. How do you think in the last 3 to 4 years it's been a lot different, or have you seen this kind of pace of innovation start earlier than what I've experienced?
I'll let you go first, Owen.
Yeah. It does feel like it repeats itself for sure, and I'm sure you've seen that as well, Farrah. Like that, these hype words come and come. There's a cycle for 2 or 3 years, and it was blockchain and crypto and Web3, and there's always something, right?
Yeah.
But Gen AI is definitely different because it seems that every time there's a new one, it gets amplified a little bit. So I think part of that is like the social media growth effect as well. It amplifies every message so much until you can barely tolerate the amount of noise around it.
Right.
But unfortunately, that means that there's very little space for sane discussion, if I could call it that, or just meaningful discussion, because everything is drowned out. So I think it feels, I don't know what you think, but it feels like you just kind of have to wait until the noise dissipates to find out exactly what's left that's going to be sustainable and meaningful into the future. I definitely have Gen AI fatigue just from listening to the term, but I still, it's still exciting, right? But it's very hard to actually keep that excitement going when there's so much hype.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think that the bit that maybe we are not talking nearly as much is not Gen AI in itself. I think as a topic, it can be interesting. There's definitely lots of interesting stuff in there. But I think we are failing to bring to the conversation table the pros and cons, like the why and the when and the how, and it's not a solution for everything. So I think if we get to a conversation where we focus more on the technicalities of it, where we say, okay, for this use case, maybe yes, maybe this way. For this other use case, it might look like it makes sense, but then in reality, there are other solutions that might be better. So it's not like it's a universal tool that is going to solve all the problems. And I think that's what the medias are actually portraying. And that's a little bit misleading and annoying from somebody that comes with a little bit of a technical background. So hopefully when we get there, I think the conversations are going to get a little bit more useful and maybe less annoying.
I definitely agree. I think, again, that's like kind of like, I feel like we've over indexed on it so hard, you know what I mean? And start like kind of like make it like promise it's going to do all these things. But I mean, I really see it as like an assistant, it can be like, it's like somebody can do some helpful things, but you're still going to check on it. You're not going to just use whatever somebody gave you, anyhow, I also like, remember you brought up the buzzwords. So when I was at Stackery, I made a shirt called, it just said, continuously DevOpsing micro serverless, because I just was like, I'm going to put all the buzzwords on the shirt. And it was so funny. I made socks and shirts actually, and they were actually a pretty big hit.
You need to do an updated version with Gen AI now.
Gen AI, NFT, Web3. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
That can be an outfit for reInvent.
Oh my gosh. Well, actually, Matt Bonig told me he wanted to wear an out. He wants to be a mascot at reInvent, and so maybe I'll tell him he has to pick something that works with that.
We'll take some of the credit when that happens. Okay, let's change the subject a little bit. We actually have just one last question, which is a little bit of a fun one, is if you have a favorite cover art of AWS Bites podcast. Just because we spend more time, I think, creating the cover art than everything else, I think that this is an important question for us.
So I think my mind has to be Get Amped with Jeremy Daly, because I like the reference to Sound of Music. So
nice. Yeah, that's a good choice.
But okay. You guys, are they all? And it looks like they are all like based on some like movies and things.
I don't know. I think they're pretty random, whatever is the inspiration of the day. But definitely there have been a few inspired by movies. So yeah. So do you have any final remark or anything else that you want to share? If people maybe want to connect with you or reach out to you, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. I'm not gonna not call it Twitter. But I'm Farrah C32 on Twitter. I'm probably more active there than LinkedIn, but I also, I try to be as active as I can on as many of these social sites as that I have time for. But yeah, LinkedIn, Twitter. I love connecting with others. So please do reach out. Definitely always happy to help. And if people have questions about how to kind of get started in within the community, they want to ping me directly. That please do. I try to work with as many people and offer help and support wherever I can.
And to make that a little bit easier, we'll make sure to have all these links in the show notes, so you don't have to remember or try to do the spelling. Just click on the link and you can connect with Farrah. So again, thank you so much for being with us. It's been an honor and a pleasure. So yeah, again, amazing stuff. And thank you everybody for listening in today. And hopefully this was interesting to you. Leave us a comment. Let us know if there was any question that we might have missed, because maybe we'll do another episode in the future with Farrah and we can ask more questions. So, all right. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you in the next one.